Game development is a hard, extremely mentally taxing endeavor. It requires patience, cooperation, problem-solving skills, intellect, foresight, drive, passion, a clear vision, mental illness. I think you get the point, but despite all the hurdles every single game dev has to face, they'll still find ways to pump out great games time and time again. But with any industry, there are going to be some interesting characters. No game dev is perfect, but some are better than others. Some get too caught up in their vision and just keep adding more and more to the game, not knowing when to stop. Others pump out quick cash grabs, trying to take advantage of their trusting audience. Today, I wanted to talk about a few peculiar characters and attribute them to one of the 7 deadly sins: pride, greed, lust, envy, gluttony, wrath, and sloth. These are the 7 deadly sins of game developers.
Thinking that video games are art. I want to make a game about a guy who's like a piece of shit, unlikable character who by the end of the game has to transform.
You're gonna have enough subscribers. You're gonna make enough money on your Patreon thing, and somebody's gonna get tired of your shit and they're gonna sue.
Stop sending me emails.
Pride was an easy one for me. Lots of people let the popularity of their games get to their head, but not many of them are nearly as notable as Phil Fish, the lead developer for Fez. Now I'm sure you've all heard of Fez. It was everywhere back in the day. Hell, even I knew what it was, and all I did was play Minecraft and watch MLG meme compilations. But I'm here to talk about its developer, Phil Fish. Now there's something fishy about this Phil character. I'm sorry about that quip. I couldn't help but to make that joke, okay? You can't blame me. This Canadian-born man was interested in game design at an early age, citing Nintendo games as one of his earliest inspirations. He would go on to work at Ubisoft, but realized that kind of work in the industry wasn't for him, as in his mind, it felt monotonous and robotic. What he wanted was passion, innovation, and most of all, respect. Boom, Fez. The moment he revealed this game to the public, not even a demo mind you, just simple screenshots, people were enamored. As time progressed, his game would only get more recognition from people online, and even get him attention at award shows. It seemed as if all eyes were on him. Well, too bad this guy is a somewhat pretentious, too good for everyone else dope. This dude is just literally Alex Yeek, but somehow more insufferable. Keep the thought of Yeek swirling in your mind because I'll bring it up later, by the way. This guy was not a pleasant man to be around at all. It seemed he was prone to emotional outbursts, which is understandable for a game dev, honestly. Especially for someone with so much pressure placed upon him. But much of that stress was caused by his massive ego. I mean, he did create a critically acclaimed masterpiece of a game after all. He has the right to be a jerk to everyone because he's just better than everyone else. One of the main things that first brought him infamy was when a Japanese game dev asked this question: what are some recent Japanese games that inspire you? And our holy Mr. Fish responded by saying this:
they suck. I'm sorry, like, you guys need to get with the times and make better interfaces and like update your technology. We're totally kicking your ass. Back then you guys were the king of the world, but your time has passed.
This would only be the start of his downfall, as more and more people started to become more critical of him. The way this man operated, he couldn't just stay quiet and let the controversy naturally die down. Of course he had to respond in his own snarky way, because he was Phil freaking Fish, and he couldn't let these lowly critics get a hold of him. This guy had a massive case of Twitter fingers, and he couldn't just keep his mouth shut for 1 second. Any criticism towards himself or the game would be met with some snarky Twitter comment, where he would act holier than thou towards whoever he was addressing. This inability to handle criticism, or any negativity directed towards him, really hurt his game and his journey as a game dev. This man was undeniably talented, but he certainly let that talent go to his head. Sure, he made a cool indie game, but there's no need to act superior to other game devs just because you have certain views about the games they make. Phil Fish is the embodiment of pride, and that is why he is our first deadly sin. Todd Howard, you make it so hard for me to like you. I want to like you, I really do. You were seen as one of the GOATs back in the day, but now that image has fallen. For context, if you somehow don't know who Todd Howard is, he's the director and executive producer for Bethesda. Man, I say Bethesda weird. Bethesda. I can't say it. Responsible for games like Fallout 3 and 4, Skyrim, Oblivion, and just a whole lot of Elder Scrolls games apparently. If you know Bethesda, you would know how much they love money. With their add-ons that require these dumb token things that no one in their right mind should buy. I honestly don't fully blame the dude for every single greedy thing the company has done, but at this point, he's kinda become the face of it. From YouTube parody songs, to video essays, to compilations of him lying. He's lost a lot of favors he's had with consumers, and with the recent release of Starfield, it really feels like he's lost any goodwill he had left. He's an undeniably talented guy with a good resume, but his reputation has been utterly tarnished by some of his actions. His public perception is at an all-time low right now, and that's why I put this man here as the embodiment of greed. Man, there are a lot of people I can put on here. A ridiculous amount, but no one would be better than Yandere Dev. Oh, poor Yandere Dev. I originally was gonna put this guy at Sloth, but I felt like this would be more fitting. I know there are many familiar with this guy, especially after the recent allegations. But what if I told you this guy was a deviant even before he got famous? Oh my god, what a shocker. A dude who made a game about stalking and creeping on high school girls is a deviant. Who would have thought? From the very beginning of his presence on the internet, he always felt alienated by others. Early on, he would browse incel forums under the name of Ava Zephon and just talk about his loneliness. His presence in these forums went relatively unnoticed, but over time, he began to become more and more notorious within the site, mainly due to his odd, depraved behavior, constantly ranting about how lonely he is and his plans for getting a girlfriend. People were fed up with his behavior. You know you're bad when an incel forum doesn't accept you. Correct me if I'm wrong though, but I'm pretty sure the people on the site were much less extreme than the incels we know today. Yeah, they were kind of bitter and frustrated, but they weren't nearly as depraved as the ones around today. One thing that helped Yandere Dev distract him from his crippling loneliness was game development. For him, it was one of those things he was able to get validation from, or at least he thought he could get validation from it. A notable moment early on would be when he showed off his 3D fighting game and got upset when other people gave him constructive criticism, instead of the praise and attention he desired from other people. As time passed, his loneliness and need for validation would only get worse, but one thing would come along to change that. Yandere Simulator. It was a hit among such a large audience of people. 4chan users, casual gamers, YouTubers, hell, even little kids. It introduced many people to the Yandere trope, and it finally felt like all eyes were on him. This man struck gold, and all he needed to do was to secure the bag, and he'd be good. Despite that, a lot of the things in the game would come into question, more notably some of the more suggestive mechanics in the game. Usually this wouldn't be too much of a problem, but considering they were high school girls, it kinda led to some controversy. Despite this, his deviancy would take a backseat for a while, as his attention would mainly be spent on the game, or emails. I don't know, probably emails. And his need for admiration would be fulfilled by the popularity that came with it, but nothing lasts forever, whether it be a feeling or fame. And as the game lost a lot of its popularity, so did Yandere Dev lose a lot of his satisfaction from the attention he got, and once again, he began to fall back into his old ways. To be clear, he was never really well adjusted per se, just rather occupied by something else. During this period, he became a laughingstock. Many memes and videos would be made attempting to mock his character, but while all this was happening, something else was brewing behind the scenes. Back in 2023, some serious allegations against Yandere Dev came out, claiming he was talking inappropriately to a 16-year-old. Now, I remember watching this apology video, and let me tell you, it was so cringe. Genuinely, I was embarrassed. Surprisingly, he did sort of own up to his weird behavior, but he tried to paint himself as the victim during all of this, almost painting himself as an unwilling participant, when in reality, he should have taken responsibility as he was the older one here. The man had been chasing validation his whole life, but he never wanted to put in the work to achieve that. He loved the idea of being mired by a beautiful woman that would take care of him. He loved the idea of having adoring fans that would constantly praise the game and himself. And his addiction to quick validation ultimately came to a head and ruined him permanently. Lust got the better of him, and it only took a decade. Next up is in fact a Roblox developer, one named Mary Rukavina, okay. She was a pretty prominent Roblox game designer and became the lead developer for a Roblox dev group called Sonar Studios. There, she would help make games such as Creatures of Sonoria, which was basically a survival game where you play as a fantasy creature. This isn't what she's most well known for though. One of her biggest issues is her constant use of other people's ideas and not being able to handle criticism or comparison. She's been caught on multiple occasions, plagiarizing designs and even bragging about it, claiming they should be grateful. She would rule her Discord server with an iron fist like some sort of dictator, and it's clear she had issues with other people's success. A lot of that jealousy would translate to arrogance, where she'll blatantly steal designs for her game. Just kind of a mess all around. Envy is something all creators feel at a certain point, but that doesn't mean you're justified in stealing other people's ideas. Just because you think you deserve their success more. This is what true envy looks like, and it looks like trash. We all suffer from scope creep, wanting to add more and more and more onto whatever you're doing. I'm actually going to attribute the sin of gluttony to me. Yeah, it doesn't feel great being lumped next to a narcissist and a predator, but it is what it is. We always think to ourselves, yeah, Why don't I add this one little thing, just one more thing? Adding more to the game, not allowing ourselves to breathe, and instead getting caught up in the extravagance of it all. It's important to stay focused when you're making a game, and an extremely common issue all of us go through is just adding too much. I briefly worked on a Mother 4 fan game, and it was a really fun ride, but one thing I certainly struggled with is adding way too much content to the game, coming up with more cool but useless ideas that ultimately drag the entire team down. As a game dev, especially if you're working on a team, it's good to know when to stop, when to let things stay simple when they don't need to be complicated. There's no reason to add a pointless seasons mechanic in your RPG, or investing huge chunks of time in an optional area almost no one will see. Just focus on what's important. Oh boy, this will be fun. I have two for this one actually. First is the Yeek dev. He seems like a good guy and I actually like Yeek. My liking for the game first started out ironically, but I started to actually like the game. First, I watched Running Shine's review of it 1,000 times, then I watched normal reviews, then I watched videos defending the game, then I joined the subreddit, and now it's on my Steam wishlist because I genuinely want to play it. But the fallout that was the release of this game was something else. The lead developer, Andrew Allison, kind of went on a whole tirade about how people didn't understand his game, and kind of directed his anger at the medium as a whole, saying this.
My mistake was thinking that video games are art. I wanted to make a game about a guy who's like a piece of shit, unlikable character who by the end of the game has to transform. Yeah. But too many gamers, when they look at this, when they play a game, they're so used to having to identify with the character that if they play a game where the main character is unlikable or has to do some bad stuff, they immediately get triggered by it.
But this was more of a heat of the moment thing. He still works on the game to this day and has a pretty good attitude about the whole thing. Robert Romine, on the other hand, man behind Digital Homicide Studios, is a completely different story. Well, it was founded by two brothers, but I'm mainly talking about Robert here. These two would churn out piece of garbage games left and right, and unlike most devs who acknowledge their pieces of garbage are pieces of garbage, these guys thought they were churning out masterpieces, acting as if their games were equivalent to The Last Supper, The School of Athens, or This Thing I Made in 6th grade. They did not handle criticism well and would specifically target their anger towards one YouTuber, Jim Sterling, someone who had previously made fun of one of their games before. There was a whole DMCA takedown and even a lawsuit filed by Robert himself. Not only were these two wrathful and conceited, but they were just plain stupid. They had censored negative comments, refused to take accountability for their bad reputation, and overall play victim while attacking others. Truly wrathful behavior right there. Brianna Wu, a name most of you haven't heard or haven't heard in a while. A relic of the Gamergate days that has gained some relevance recently due to her statements about a certain conflict going on right now. We're not here to talk about either of those things though. I lived all of my life on the internet without knowing what Gamergate was, and I'm not about to find out. What I am here to talk about is the final deadly sin, Sloth. Now, Brianna Wu is a game developer, and she did in fact release a game. And let's just say for the contents of the game, it took way too long for it to release. If you want to have any idea how bad this game is, just look at the Google user reviews and see for yourself. Many were disgruntled with how long the game was taking. For reference, it was first set to release in 2013, but didn't release on computer until freaking 2016. Yeah, the mobile version released in 2014, but it shouldn't take 2 years to port it to PC. All this laziness, ineptitude, whatever. The length of time it took to make this game did not conjure up the results one would expect, especially considering there was a whole team working on this game. Even worse is that later on, the mobile version would be updated and users had to pay for the game again just to play it. And Brianna Wu really expected consumers to buy the game again just to play the update. Not only did you move at a snail's pace when you made this game, but you had the audacity to double charge people for a game they supposedly already own. Not only are you lazy, but you're also greedy, wrathful, envious. Hell, you're all of the 7 deadly sins. Oh yeah, and Only Plays did the playthrough of this game and it's hilarious, you should watch it. I hope I have thoroughly enriched your mind, fellow aspiring game dev. Please, if you're going to make a game, don't be like any of these people. I truly respect the craft, and there are many great devs out there. So, why don't you become one of them one day, eh? Your Toby Foxes, your Scott Cawthons, your Concerned Apes. I know you have the power of it in you. All you gotta do is just hang in there.